The Soldier, Time of Stillness, Year 3. As the wind had died down entirely, a strange quiet had replaced it, one that was only rarely interrupted with the distant howling of torturous breezes and strange and unearthly noises in the doldrums of the middlemost hour. Ruslana felt entirely certain that they were a prelude to something else, and that it was probably Leopold. The man did not stop, after all, men like him, hungry and lean, seldom did. She had no proof for her accusations and worries, of course, and she had received worried looks from the rest of her friends, as well. They did not understand, and couldn't understand. Who had made the same mistakes, after all? Every day, she pushed herself to travel farther, searching for any clues as to the locations of her quarry. But it seemed as if he had dropped off the island itself. Perhaps crawled into a hole and went still, like the weather. But the repeated failures to find any new information had led to a bitterness she could not share. Grendolf would understand the need for vengeance, but could not help her, not like this, and not when his own worries about the fate of the island, or greater matters, for it often seemed that the Lich looked in many places, at many times were so overwhelming. Lorelei. Ruslana was still for a moment, and tried to think a little less, for the moment. It wasn't easy for her to talk to Lorelei, even though talking to Lorelei was the easiest thing in the world. So, alone in the deep woods, where the trees were silent, and the petrified figures of creatures that might have been birds were quiet, also, Ruslana sat and waited and thought.
Tea is a problem, to be sure. But you shouldn't be so hard on yourself, Lana. Problems are meant to be solved, and if we fail, there's no one else left.
Ruslana and her mother weren't talking to themselves about something vital, today. The atmosphere had been unusual quiet. Corporate had even been promising they had a solution, and it seemed like everyone was deep into cups and caviar, as Dad might put it.
Don't know if I agree. Someone has to be hard on themselves, so other people don't need to.
She felt herself reply, and the memory was still fresh. No, wait. What had they been talking about, there? It had been this project, of course, but... Drifting away from the memory, Ruslana tried to remember happier times, and found herself drawing knots. Even her conversations with Calimere grew faded, muzzy, confusing.
What am I looking for?
Asking her mind a question that it seemed it would not answer, the roar of one of the sudden strange sounds, like crystal and thunder, dispelled her thoughtful musings.
Old soldiers.
Cursing, Ruslana pulled herself behind a tree, and stared up into the sky. It wasn't Dragunov, and it wasn't Leopold, and it was just the weather, but this wasn't normal for the island, was it? Had it been Leopold who changed the seasons, or... She felt the white-hot terror that accompanied a new thought, one that screamed at her, "This is vital. You must listen." But refused to explain why, and it was painful, and aggravating, and she desired no part of it. Just to rest for a moment. Just to not feel, for a moment. Ruslana shut her eyes again, and tried to remember, but her mother was teaching her how to field strip a rifle. Her mother's head was blurry, and Ruslana couldn't remember what she looked like, at the moment. Deep, quiet breaths. After a while, she began to hum to herself. It was a very distant song, and she couldn't recall the title, but she recalled the tune.
Wonder, what on earth it'd be like, visiting nobility? Probably the same as visiting corporate, right, Kaylee?
No response.
There's nothing really like nobles, back home. I guess, maybe, we're the nobles. Lots of duty and obligations. If you do them right, you create more of them. But that's how it has to be.
Still, there was no response.
I don't know if I can handle a place without them, Kaylee. I don't know if I can deal with the idea that barring the actions of others, this place is basically okay. I'm not afraid of starvation, or disease, or growing old.
Ruslana looked to her side, and laughed until it hurt to smile.
But I'm just trying to commiserate, right now. Trying to understand things. Dealing with the loneliness. Help me, Kaylee.
Of course, no reply came. Ruslana rolled her shoulders back, and eased off the tree trunk. It had felt brittle and ashen, yet hard as obsidian. What was happening here? What would happen to this place?
You'll be all right, soldier. You've gotta be. No one else is going to take care of this. No one else will.
Around her, the trees stood in quiet judgment, frozen forever. She wasn't sure what had happened, but some groves had just seized up, as if caught in the glare of a Euralian fiend, something that traveled in the dead of night and wept until all around it were as quiet and unmovable as it was. Maybe when Dragunov was defeated, somehow, or appeased, or whatever had to be done, they would return to normal. Maybe it was Leo. Maybe he was trying to eat away the souls of plant matter to increase his own power. For some reason, the thought brought a chuckle to her lips. It seemed a bit much, even for someone quite as desperate as he. Yeah. She'd be all right. She had to be all right. Above her, a sudden and arctic breeze on a warm and balmy day rocketed through the air above, scouring the branches and bending them in strange and unnatural positions. Ruslana threw her arms over her head, but there was little need. As painful as the breeze was, and even as it knocked her to the ground, it was over in a moment. Just another strange quirk in this islander life. Still. Behind her, they looked less like trees and more like deformed shapes, all broken and scattered and yet still rooted to the ground, weeping resin from tiny cuts, and incapable of expressing their regrets to any who might listen. This place isn't good for you. You won't find anything new. Time to go home. Her mind cautioned her, perhaps even begged. But still, Ruslana felt it. That itching that came with being so close to understanding something that needed to be understood, the feeling of coming close to success, to saving someone, even if only one person, even if only for one day. And it led nowhere, and defeated, the soldier left the glade. One of so many like it. Behind her, walking the long way back to district. When she returned, it was nightfall. A gentle, warm night, helped by the glow of industry. They'd relocated a bit, since the tunnels beneath seemed to go on forever and ever. But warm fires and electric lights made the whole place feel comfortable and welcoming, and she cast about, eyes still adjusting to the half-light after the long, golden-accented days. The observatory was a recent construction. Grendolf had insisted on it, insisted that with 2 magic users around practicing their arcane arts it was not only a necessity, but one that would enable him to pursue his own goals. When not being asked to fulfill a task, the Lich rarely left it. Occasionally, Lorelei would be here as well, and the two would silently stare into the sky with the aid of glass and plastics and synthetic fibers, and Ruslana understood none of it, save that something about the process disturbed her. But today, only Grendolf was there, and he was not staring into the sky at all, but leaning against one of several standing desks. Peculiarly, the Lich had a very large pair of headphones, the kind tank operators or aviators occasionally used. Not that they'd any planes, at the end. Perhaps he got jealous of Lorelei? It seemed oddly petulant, and out of character for the Crimson Lich, and she would have laughed. But his expression was so quiet, so serious that she couldn't bring herself to, even had she wanted.
Grendolf. Report. There is nothing to report. You? All right. That necessary for some kind of magic, or?
Sighing, the Lich stopped a music player upon the desk. One that looked far older than the headphones themselves. Both were likely scavenged from some other time or place, or wherever the Lich went.
No. It is just music. Sometimes I desire to listen, to remind myself.
Both were silent, but Ruslana understood well enough. Once again, she felt a strange connection between warfare and undeath, one that she did not entirely like to consider too strongly.
Haven't had the chance to ask you this, recently. Holding up, or? Perhaps not.
Grendolf conceded, tapping one skeletal finger against the desk. It made a rattle distinctive of bone.
There is a strange foreboding in the air. Can you not feel it? that things are finally proceeding as they ought to, but not for us. May I confide something in you, O soldier?
Ruslana leaned back against the wall, and shut her eyes. It was more comfortable here, and her mind felt less crowded by mixed and fading memories. Strange, how powerful just the feeling of being someplace you could call safe, somewhere you could call home, ended up being.
I am terrified of a final death. To have cheated it so frequently, even knowing the end will likely not end, for me. I am frightened of it. And I cannot escape this shaking feeling.
His voice growled like charnel house fires, but some of the fire had burnt out and become smoke. He did not sound scared, but Ruslana knew well enough to know that sometimes it was when you did your best to sound brave, that you were at your most terrified.
Do you feel like... Grendolf? Do you feel like it's going to end poorly, for us? No, I am not a defeatist. I refuse to give in to this, but auspice is a terrible thing, there are powers beyond powers, fragments of things that I have only witnessed in a moment. Machinations are turning, Ruslana. Ah, but they always are. Hey! Can I listen to what you were listening to, for a moment?
His chuckling was slow, laggard, perhaps a little curious, but the Lich acquiesced readily enough. Huge headphones were comforting in their own way, they made her feel smaller and younger, but not necessarily weaker. Maybe they just made her ears feel small, a bit. As for the music itself...
So, it's just nature sounds, hey? Occasionally with one or two instrumentals. I did not choose this, though I found it. It is oddly calming, isn't it? Honestly? Yeah. Especially with the lack of things here. Especially with all of this happening. You should find more stuff like this. I think I might make it an order, set you and Lorelei to it. It would be a waste of time. I know.
She didn't remove the headphones as they talked. Even though both soldier and sorcerer were glumly considering the matter of time, it was amazing how the distant cry of loon upon lake made her troubles feel more distant, more immaterial.
Maybe it isn't, though. If it really is as bad as all that, one of my duties is to make sure it isn't so bad, before the end. That's my decision. Besides, haven't exactly been one for material things in the past. Now isn't a bad enough time to start. You will find no protest here, Ruslana. Though, may I now question you? Of course. That's what friends are for.
The Lich was silent for a very long time, only speaking after Ruslana had finally removed the headphones and placed them upon the standing desk. When he did, it was when he had wandered over to the largest of the 4 telescopes that populated this place, staring at it as if the surface, and not the lens, held some answer he sought.
Do you trust her? No. Do you admire her? Lorelei. Dominus, I don't know. Don't know much of anything, but...
Ruslana sighed, removed herself from the wall and sat on the floor, watching Grendolf.
I like her a lot. Was actually thinking of checking in on her, if she's here, after I finished checking in on you. Maybe seeing if she wasn't interested in just... talking, relaxing a bit. That doesn't sound so horrible. If I were not captivated by the power of song, I might join you. Maybe I wouldn't invite you at the moment, song or no.
Ruslana chuckled, and the great mage feigned thunderous indignation, though it was obvious from his rattling laugh that he did not mind.
So it is. I think it is good that you have another, wearing the skin of a human, to care for in kind.
Though his words were gentle, for Grendolf, something about them sent the strange anticipation she had felt earlier into overdrive. Something strange and unpleasant stirred deep within her, and Ruslana began to find the words to voice it.
Hey! Grendolf! I think you've said that before. Paul's human though, right?
The Lich was silent, and his silence was an answer.
I mean, Lorelei's human, right?
The Lich was silent, and when he spoke, his voice was more cautious than she had heard for some time.
Once, even I was human. Magic changes things, and reshapes them. Does not make them inhuman, but... Say no more. I don't want to think about this, right now. As you wish. It is never an easy thing to think about. May I offer you some other conversation, instead? Wouldn't mind it.
At once, the Lich appeared to her side, skeletal fingertips held under his crimson jaw.
Perhaps it is finally time to send offers of trade and well-wishing to that artist colony. Should we not consider what we send? You sound so dismissive. Not one for freebies, or artists. Quite the opposite. But I felt it might make you laugh. Thanks.
Ruslana pretended to peer through one of the lenses. It was slightly smudged from Lorelei eyeballing it all day and night, but that wasn't so uncomfortable. It was the same principle as one of those pocket telescopes, anyway. You always ended up getting eye on eye with someone else, and just had to deal with it. She didn't understand or recognize the sky above, however, and soon gave up on the pretense.
I'm feeling much better, though. And I would like to send something nice over. To know what they properly need, now, HRMN. Guess I'll see what our residents have to say on the matter.
And then, Ruslana had an idea.
Grendolf. We ought to build roads. Sounds as if it could be a good idea, or somewhat asphalty. I am quite sorry. An old acquaintance was one for both rhyme and pun, and I am not so capable in either. Honestly, I just blanked it out. Triage. You can't let ill humor spike your wheels and send you crashing to a halt. What have I done?
Good. Good. The realities of having tasks were like having ranks around her. You felt less lonely, even as an officer, when you knew you were surrounded by those who would fight in kind. Similarly, goals were a way away from loneliness. An infrastructure, that was the most important thing in any settlement, right? It meant they could evacuate back and forth as necessary, if something really bad, really unexpected were to happen. The roads back home had been built for that purpose and the transport of weapons.
Asphalt is simple enough to produce. We'll use beets, they should adapt to the island well enough. You can find me some, yeah. This feels as if it may also have an alternate motive, though do not underestimate my powers. I shall converse with others who travel as I do, if I may not find what you seek, they shall. Perfect. Bitumen production means roads, and roads mean safety. Plus, we can put them over defensible terrain. If it looks well traveled, it's more likely to be attacked. We can put convoys on it, empty ones, let that old guy at it, and... Ruslana.
Ruslana hadn't realized she was staring so intently into the telescope. She pulled back, rubbing at her eye and trying to feel it. Blinking several times, her vision seemed divided unnaturally between the right and left hemisphere of the room.
Do not pursue this as a means of putting forth our work. A good task turned to ill purpose. Yeah. Sorry. I've been feeling it recently. Don't worry about me. I shall trust you, on this matter. But I may worry, there is much to worry about it.
Then, Grendolf was gone.
Probably for the best.
Ruslana murmured to herself, unsure of how to feel. But there was work to be done, and it would not do itself. And, as sometimes was the case when there was work to be done, even if it were rarely for her, she had the intense desire not to do it, not right at this moment. Night outside was pleasant, warm, and humid. It felt as if it might rain, if rain weren't an alien thing in these times, or that much motion seemed a rare and bizarre occurrence. The deep bunkers had become a rec room despite her best efforts, but Ruslana didn't feel too terrible about it. It kept morale up, and morale was important, after all. In the rightmost corner of the room, several machines of varying age and integrity had been set up. There was no obvious power for them, nor should they actually be capable of running. And yet, somehow... Paul was complaining bitterly about losing, though he didn't look too perturbed, and Lorelei was taking her turn at one which was decorated with images of snarling specters and brusque bugbears. Possibly. There seemed to be a pinball component to it, of the kind she had seen in Mess. What an utterly strange game. Lorelei smiled that worldwide smile, and waved her over excitedly.
Hey, there. Good to see you, Ruslana. I found some stuff, and I thought we'd try having some fun with it, but... in this case, fun seems to be a quality of trial and error.
Paul shook his head, still looking sour.
These machines seem to be designed for the house to win, every time. We're the house, though. What's with that? Not that I mind a bit of wise business practice, but... seems interesting, Lorelei.
Ruslana replied, wisely ignoring Paul, who was locked in a glaring match with a glowing cabinet. The cabinet was winning.
Mind if I give her a try? Well, if you would like. Knock yourself out.
Lorelei responded a little hastily, rolling out of the way and nearly rolling onto one of the sleeping stone folk. Thankfully, they seemed to have developed a strong and almost preternatural bond with one another, and the boulder woke up with a shimmer of light. Then hopped to the side, quietly. Boulders, hopping. What a world. Running her fingers over her own shorn hair, for good luck, Ruslana soon found herself facing a screen that made fun of her, her lineage, her lack of credits, her lack of class, and her lack of patience. It was infuriating but a little fun, she had to admit.
You're not very good at stuff like this, are you?
Lorelei murmured, and though Ruslana couldn't be certain, she had the distinct impression her friend was making fun of her. It hurt, but not in an unpleasant way. What a weird feeling.
No, ma'am. Can't even believe that spike trap, who would think that's fair? See? I'm telling you, the games are rigged. Just a minute. I need a soda to cool my internal anger.
Paul wandered off, and Ruslana felt her stomach grumble in protest. She had been running on fumes for some time. After all, it was probably for the best that he go prepare something. Though she was really looking forward to a time when they reliably had foods that weren't flash frozen or entirely starch.
It's not that difficult, you just have to keep trying. I'm pretty sure if you keep it up, you'll be better than me in no time.
Given that Lorelei hadn't seemed to have gotten that much farther herself, it wouldn't normally have felt like that much of an encouragement, but Ruslana felt her spirits lift. And some of her worries, too.
Thanks. I'll consider giving it another go sometime, though I think I might just be content to watch you try your hand at. I'm not really one to save the princess. That's a hero's job, after all.
For once, the memory didn't feel so bad. In a way, after all. No, not in a way. Kalimir had.
Are you all right? Better than I've been, thanks to you. Just thinking of an old friend, is all. So. Actually, I came here to borrow some of your time, if you're not busy with witch magic things.
Ruslana took a seat across the former plotting table, now consigned to being the party table, which was a lot less serious and a lot more pleasant. It had taken quite the beating from Miss Hughes at their festivities, but that had also lent it an air of whimsy and charm. Or so she told herself, to try to avoid the notable scratches where feet had rested, not too long ago. Lorelei pulled into place next to her, fiddling with the lock on her wheelchair before resting her hands against the table. The voluminousness of that sweater made her arms look like they were hiding from something, Ruslana decided. Am I glowering again? Cripes. How to smile, just like so. It was surprisingly easier than she had remembered. You just had to mean it.
When you came in, I felt like you had gotten into a fight or something. I know you might feel like we can't notice, but I can, at least.
Lorelei pulled her hat down, so that it hid her eyes a little bit. Perhaps she did it to seem enigmatic, or perhaps to hide the worry that tugged at her lips, but Ruslana didn't care. A true witch could choose to do as she pleased, after all. That was the freedom of not being bound by duty.
Don't worry. I got the talking to from my compatriot, and am going to be taking better care of myself. You can trust me on this one. Can I, now?
Lorelei frowned further, but her refusal to accept Ruslana and her assurances did not prevent her from moving onwards. With a sudden toothy smile, Lorelei rested her chin against her steepled fingers, staring up at Ruslana with bright eyes.
So, what did you want to borrow my time for? I hope it's okay. I've been trying to find stuff, too. This place is kind of empty and I'm getting used to stepping between, which takes a lot of effort. But home has to be a place where you can be happy.
Even though she wasn't sure, she agreed. Home should be a place where you felt safe, and happiness was a pleasant afterthought. Lorelei's enthusiasm was infectious. Besides, it wasn't like Ruslana had any way of stopping her, even if she had wanted to.
Well, it's kind of complicated. Maybe I just wanted to say I had had my daily conversation with a witch. Oh, is that all? You can always talk to my friend, Mildred, then. She's a much better conversationalist, and she's wise. Pretty, too.
She wasn't even joking, and Ruslana felt a little abashed.
Maybe I will, sometime. But, moving on, what was it? I had wanted to send some things to Zhao and his people. You know, kind of a howdy neighbor, kind of thing.
Lorelei was laughing quietly, and Ruslana quietly wished she had lots of hair, or a huge hat, or something else to hide behind. Still, a soldier's duty was to bear through things without flinching, and this was no exception.
I don't know if Bones or Zemby are really his people, but I love that idea, a lot. Can I help in any way? Yes. I mean, absolutely. Well, see, I'd also been thinking. It wouldn't be the worst thing if we had roads. I mean, you can probably just zip wherever you want, now. Not exactly. It's more complex than that. You end up losing track of time or space and end up other places. Would you like to hear about some of the ones I've seen?
Lorelei's voice wavered, and Ruslana wanted to respond enthusiastically, and spend the rest of the day just listening to whatever realms must lurk just beyond her sight, beyond most people's sight. But there was work to be done, and even if Lorelei didn't take it well. Though of course she did, only smiling pleasantly as Ruslana shook her head.
Not right now, though later I'd like that, a lot anyway. I want to have a network of roads, even if they're just squiggly, curvy lines, even just footpaths. That'll come later, but... Do you have any ideas for things to send over?
Soon, they had stretched out an expanse of paper, left over from the time of tempests, which had already faded from memory, somewhat. There were also bits of chalk, pastels, pencils, and things with which to create a list, though Lorelei occasionally just doodled. But they had the beginning of a list, and not a bad one. Sundries, silverware.
Who could live in a cave, and not want a fancy plate to eat fungus off of?
Lorelei had inquired, and she had been right, naturally. Eventually, Paul had returned and agreed to send over noodles and soda of a most cucumber-y variety, which he announced with pride might even be getting a little popular amongst those on the island. It wasn't as if they had many other options, but even still. Ruslana's stomach growled again, and she inquired as to why they, themselves, hadn't decided to make dinner yet.
Well, I know it was my turn to be a productive member of society tonight, but Binky seemed pretty focused on something. Made me promise to come right back. Mysterious, isn't it?
Paul smiled out from under the rims of his glasses, looking coy.
You can never tell what big guys like him are thinking. I've been meaning to ask him where he lost that AR, you know. No offense taken. Since you kindly keep our troop hydrated and fed most of the time, it's only right that you've earned the rarefied honor of grumbling and speaking your mind. Anyway, I'm sure he lost his other eye doing something important. That's generally how it goes.
Ruslana lay back in her chair, stretching out towards the ceiling and trying to wipe the sudden exhaustion from her mind. It was stubborn, however. The kind of exhaustion that demanded you either sleep or forfeit, and she had no intention of doing either. At least not until she had eaten. She had seen people try to cover ground the way she had on empty stomachs and empty eyes, and some failures there were worse deaths than had come from steel rain and coarse, unbreathable fumes.
Please be careful, Binky is going to be right through.
But Binky was not right through, for the Cyclops took his time to descend the ladder down with great care. Someone had found him a classical chef's hat, of the kind you saw in picture books from better times. It was white, fluffy, and utterly adorable, and only served to accentuate the delicious and undeniably amazing smell of the 2 round trays carrying glorious masses of toasted wheat, red-drenched ground marinara, what smelled and looked like fresh basil, and thin strands of cheese.
Oh, wow!
Lorelei murmured quietly, her hands holding her still even as her eyes, white as plates, followed Binky as he carefully placed each tray on the table. It was hard not to dig in, but
that looks fairly incredible, Binky. Did you make these yourself? Yes. Binky made them in the hottest fire.
The Cyclops responded joyfully, obviously referring to the foundry fires. That didn't seem entirely hygienic, but at the moment Ruslana was far too hungry to care.
The nice dead man brought ingredients. Said it seemed like friends were needing warm food, gave me advice on how to make it nice. Binky hopes it's okay.
The last comment was directed at Paul, whose glasses were slightly misted.
Binky. Manitoba. I do what I do for the love of the craft and the funds it provides. No sane human being would turn down pizza. Let's do this.
And then the 4 descended upon the pizza margarita like winter wolves, and it was soon confined to crumbs and the still warm, pleasant smell lingering in the air. Chapter end.